In the heart of our great nation, where the strength of our communities is built upon the foundation of strong and loving families, an urgent crisis is unfolding. Child Protective Services, CPS, an institution designed to safeguard our most vulnerable, has in many cases betrayed its noble mission. Too often, families are torn apart not by neglect or abuse, but by systemic failures and corruption. We can no longer stand idly by as these injustices continue. We are here to give a voice to those who have been isolated, to shine a light on the corruption, and to rally our fellow citizens in this critical fight for justice. Every day, countless families are caught in a web of bureaucracy and abuse of power, their lives disrupted and their bonds shattered. Children, who should be nurtured and protected, are instead placed in situations that can be just as, if not more, harmful than the circumstances from which they were taken. Parents, often bewildered and powerless, face insurmountable odds as they fight to reunite with their children. This is not the America we believe in. We cannot allow these injustices to persist. Our mission is to educate, to inform, and to inspire action. We promise to bring you daily updates on CPS, exposing the truth and fighting for reform. We must remember that the future of our nation depends on the strength and unity of our families. By standing together, we can hold CPS accountable and ensure that it fulfills its true purpose, protecting children and preserving families. This is a fight we must not and will not lose. We are committed to saving our families and securing a brighter future for all. The road ahead is challenging, but with your support, we can make a difference. Together, we will bring hope to those who have lost it and ensure that justice prevails. Let us unite with unwavering resolve and a sense of patriotic duty to safeguard the integrity of our families and the future of our nation.
Good evening, guys. You are watching Turn the Page with Kim Page. I am your host, Kim Page. Tonight, I decided I wanted to do something just a little bit different. Most of the time, our shows have either guests or other hosts where we discuss things about what's going on in the world of CPS. But one thing that I don't think that we have done, and I think it would be a good idea to do, is we've never really discussed the terms that are used when a CPS case is opened, whether it is the legal terminology, the terms that CPS uses, the terms that advocates use. And I think that it would be a good idea for us to look at some of these words and explain to y'all what exactly those words mean in a layman's terms. If y'all like this and y'all want to do further shows similar to this, please let me know. We can maybe make it a weekly thing. But what I thought we could do tonight is let's start off with some of the words that you hear when a CPS case opens up. So when CPS becomes involved in your life, they don't just become involved in your life because they got a wild hair up their ass and decided to come beat on your door. They have to have a report made to them. This report will come from somebody who is either a mandated reporter. A mandated reporter is a person who is required by their position, professionally, whether it's a teacher, a doctor, a social worker, a clergyman. They're a person who is mandated and required by the state to report anything that they suspect is abuse or neglect. Now, I do want to clarify this. I am a mandated reporter, so I want to make sure that y'all understand a mandated reporter from my perspective. I have never been educated as to what exactly constitutes abuse or neglect. If I make a report, it is based on my subjective knowledge. Now, with my specific position as a residential supervisor for a group home with adults who have mental and or physical disabilities, we have certain things that we understand are abuse or neglect. However, teachers are not given a hard and fast definition of what is considered abuse or neglect. Clergymen are not. Doctors are semi-educated, but they're not educated in the way that would constitute a legal perspective. So many times when a mandated reporter is reporting, they are reporting based on their own subjective opinion, their own, I think that it's abuse for you to not let your kid have a TV, or it's abuse for you to tell your kid that they can wear shorts when it's 60 degrees outside. So it's a subjective thing. So when CPS gets a call, they will either get a call from a mandated reporter or they will get a call from a quote unquote concerned citizen. Now, when a mandated reporter calls, CPS puts this report on as a higher priority call than if a concerned citizen calls. Reason being is because mandated reporters are somebody that is trusted by the state to have better judgment as to what warrants a call. Concerned citizens, their calls are taken a little less seriously, although they are taken seriously. It's a little less serious than a mandated reporter. So CPS gets a call, and neither a mandated reporter nor a concerned citizen in almost every state. I think there's one state that recently passed a law that said that you can remain anonymous to the person you're reporting, but you have to give your information to CPS. But in every other state, if you are a mandated reporter or a concerned citizen, if you make a report, you are not required to give any identifying information. This means that I can call and tell them that my name is Madonna and I would like to report that Beyonce is beating on Blue Ivy. I can do that, or I can just call and say that Beyonce is beating on Blue Ivy. I do not have to tell who I am. I don't have to tell that I'm Madonna, tell that I'm Kim. I can say I don't want to give any information about who I report will be taken, and it still is to be investigated by CPS. So every state requires their Child Protective Services divisions to investigate a report, usually within between 24 and 72 hours, depending on the nature of the report. If the report is that, we'll go with Beyonce. Beyonce is putting cigarettes out on Blue Ivy's arm. That's a pretty serious accusation. It can cause long-term damage to the child, physical, psychological. If the report is, if that's the report, then CPS is going to have to come out within 24 hours, because that is a situation where the child would be in what's referred to as imminent danger. Now, imminent danger is a term that there is no actual. It's kind of vague. It's supposed to mean that it's immediate danger. That if the child is not immediately removed from this situation, they will die. For example, if Beyonce had a gun to Blue Ivy's head and was threatening to pull the trigger, that would be an imminent danger situation. Because there is not a hard and fast legal definition of that word, it can be misinterpreted to the cigarette situation. Oh, this child's going to be permanently scarred by the cigarettes. That means they're in imminent danger. That's not what it's supposed to be, but because of miseducation of caseworkers, oftentimes they use things like that to say it's imminent danger. When it is a situation where CPS is allowed to come out within 72 hours, it's usually a situation such as the kids haven't had a bath. They're dirty. They are the food in the house is very minimal. It's not something that they're going to die if the children, if the children are not seen immediately. So they prioritize them because there are sometimes cases where the child could possibly die if they're not out there immediately. So that's how they prioritize these things. So when a CPS worker gets the report, when CPS gets the report, it goes to intake. There is a person who answers the phone. Hi, this is CPS. And you tell them, hi, my name is Madonna, or I'm not telling my name, but I would like to report about Beyonce abusing her child. Now, just for legal reasons, this is just a made-up scenario. Beyonce's not abusing her kid. We're just using her name just for this situation. No accusations against her. So, Beyonce, I want to report that Beyonce is abusing her child. Okay, Miss Reporter, what kind of things is Beyonce doing to her child? So I say, well, Beyonce is putting cigarettes out on her child's arm, and there is no food. So this report contains two things. One that is a pretty serious accusation, and one that is a mild accusation. So they're going to have to prioritize this as a 24-hour response. So what then happens is the intake worker will find out who the next CPS worker is to be assigned a case. CPS workers don't get to come up and go, I want a case, I want a case, I want a case. That's not how it works. They have 10, 15, 27, however many caseworkers they have. They are in order, and each one is assigned a case in order of who's next. So the intake worker sends the information that was provided by the caller to the CPS worker. The CPS worker then opens the case file. The CPS worker will take the information. If they know where Beyonce lives, then they will go to Beyonce's home and ask to see the child. If they do not know where Beyonce lives, but they have a phone number for Beyonce, they will call Beyonce and say, hey, Beyonce, we've got a report. We need to see Blue Ivy. When the CPS worker makes contact with the parent, either in person or over the phone, they have started their investigation. Now, Child Protective Services is mandated by law. They are required by law to investigate. That does not mean that the parents are also required to cooperate. Because of the Constitution, we have the right to tell any government agent or third-party contractor, which is what CPS is, we do not want to participate, and we are not legally required to. That does not mean that they are going to take that no lightly. So, let's say that caseworker comes out and sees Beyonce and says, hey, Beyonce, I need to see Blue Ivy and see if you're actually putting cigarettes out on Blue Ivy's arm. So Beyonce says, okay, fine, Blue Ivy, come here. Hold your arms out. There you go. There's no cigarette marks on Blue Ivy's arm. Okay. Well, the other part of the complaint was that you don't have food in. Would you mind showing us your kitchen to prove? Beyonce can say, nope, doing it, leave. If Beyonce does that, because having no food is usually an ongoing situation, CPS is likely not to close out the case. If Blue Ivy says yes, or excuse me, if Beyonce says, yeah, sure, come on in the house and I'll let you see the kitchen, and the house is packed with thousands of dollars worth of food, then the CPS worker is going to go, okay, so you've got food and there's no cigarette burns on Blue Ivy's arms. Great. Awesome. At that particular point, the caseworker is going to go back to the CPS office and they are going to do what's called a staffing. They call it staffing with their supervisor and possibly the supervisor's supervisor, which is usually the program director. They will talk to their supervisor and the program director and let them know what they found when they went to the house. If the caseworker says this is not a situation that the child is being abused, we need to just close this case out, then the supervisor will likely close the case out. Now this is everything that I'm telling y'all, this is the way it's supposed to work. It is not the way that it actually works. This is the way it's supposed to work. So, if in the course of going in the home, the caseworker saw that there were several guns laying out in the open and several knives laying out, and both of these types of weapons were in very easy reach of Blue Ivy. Because Beyonce allowed the caseworker in her home, the caseworker can use anything that she saw to continue to open the case or to keep the case open. At that point, she's going to tell her supervisor, this is what I saw, and I think that we need to continue to investigate this case. So what they're going to do is they're going to schedule for the caseworker to make an unannounced visit, likely within the next 15 to 30 days. If they feel like the situation was a little more dangerous, then there's a possibility the child could get a hold of this. If they saw a crack rock sitting next to these guns and the baby was playing in a pile of cocaine, they're going to go ahead and immediately contact the court and say, we need to take these children. This is what they're supposed to do. So when they do that, they're going to file what's called a petition. A petition is the first legal document that is filed to ask the court to give CPS custody of your child. Now, custody is when a judge gives somebody else the physical possession of your child, and they have the right to make legal decisions for your child. This does not mean that you have no rights to your child. This just means that certain things are allowed to be done when it comes to somebody else having custody. For example, if your child fell down the steps at school and needed to go to the emergency room, they would have the legal right to authorize medical treatment for your child. So, if the caseworker saw the guns and said, I think that this is not exactly the safest home. I don't think that you are intentionally being a bad parent. Your kid's not playing in a pile of cocaine, but I think that there's some things that need to be worked on. I think that it would be a good idea for you to be put on a safety plan and your child go with somebody else, another family member or friend. Now, what a safety plan is, a safety plan is a non-binding contract that CPS will try to have parents sign, giving them the right to take their children from the home and place the children with a friend or family member. Now, let me explain this part to you. A safety plan is a non-binding contract. The reason for that is because a contract, which is enforceable, has to have certain components to that contract. First thing you have to have is an offer. I want to give you X, Y, and Z. If you give me X, A, B, and C, okay? So if I offer to sell Bob my car, Bob is going to give me give me money for the car. So that is our proposal. You give me the car, I give you the money. We have to both agree that that is what we're going to do. That is accepting it. Consideration is the biggest thing that must be included with a contract. If there is no consideration, a contract is void. It is not enforceable. Nobody, not a judge, not the president, has the legal right to enforce it. What consideration is? Consideration is the things that are being traded. A contract is not, I'll give you my car. A contract with consideration is, I will give you my car for a sum of money. So when CPS comes in, CPS will tell parents that we're going to take your children and place them with a friend or family member of your choice. And they're going to stay with that friend or family member while we work with you to improve your parenting skills and or your situation. Now, a safety plan also must have an agreement between both people, both parties. You cannot be forced into it. If you are forced into it, if they tell you, you will either sign this safety plan or we're going to take you to court and get custody of your kids, that is coercion. That is illegal. That is under duress. So when people tell you that a safety plan is not enforceable, it is because it is not a contract. It is as good as the paper it's written on. Throw it away, bonk them in the head with it. Wad it up and bonk them in the head with it. It means nothing. It has as much power as if the manager of Walmart came in and said, I'm going to take your kid and give them to somebody else, and you got to sign this paper saying that it's okay. So if you have CPS approach you and ask you to sign a safety plan, The recommendation from myself and other advocates is that if you feel you have no choice but to sign the safety plan, because oftentimes parents are intimidated by having police presence, and you sign the safety plan, after your name, write either the letters VC, Victor, cartoon, or UD. VC is Latin for via coitus, and UD is for under duress. Both of them means that I'm doing this without willingly participating, that I have been made to do this. So CPS has come in and we've got a safety plan. Now, what a safety plan is supposed to be, I'm going to read you the official version of what a safety plan is. A safety plan is a structured strategy designed to protect a child from potential harm or risk. It typically includes immediate protection measures, which is usually placing your child in another home until you can get things situated. Identifying specific safety risks, the guns and knives at Beyonce's home. Detailing steps to mitigate those risks. Let's get Beyonce a gun safe so that those weapons can be put in and they're no longer accessible to the children. Outlining immediate actions to ensure the child's safety. The child is going to be with friends or family while we get the gun safe and we put all the guns into the gun safe. It also contains responsible parties. These are specific individuals responsible for the child's protection, which is going to be the friend or family member that your children are staying with during this time. Contact information for key support people. So if you have a friend that can't take the kids, but they can help you with maybe getting the kids back and forth to school, or they can be an emergency contact should something happen. The other friend that's caring for them can't pick them up. And also abilities. It's supposed to be specific actions to prevent potential harm, monitoring and supervision protocols. So this is where CPS will check in on the parent, check in on Beyonce to see if she's purchased a gun safe, to see if all the guns are placed into the gun safe. The CPS worker is supposed to make sure that the friend or family member who has the child is somebody that's not going to abuse the child, that is protecting the child, that they have enough food or take on an extra child for whatever. And it also contains any emergency contact protocol that is going to be not only for the parent, but the person who the safety plan is with, as well as the CPS worker themselves. And a safety plan also will be documentation. This is a written agreement. Everything that is done that's laid out in the safety plan must be documented. And it must have a date that it starts, and it must have a date that it ends. Now, oftentimes they have prefab documents where it says that the safety plan is good for 30 days. So the caseworker won't actually write that in. Sometimes they will have to write it in. It depends on what actual documentation each individual CPS office uses. So what a safety plan's goal is supposed to be is to create a clear, actionable strategy to protect the child's physical and emotional well-being. Now, we all know that CPS doesn't do those things, but knowing what they're supposed to do is one of the biggest things that I feel will help parents in fighting CPS. If you know that they're not allowed to just take your child, because they don't like that the child had peanut butter and jelly sandwich at lunch for school lunch. They would rather them have a tuna sandwich. They can't take your children for that. They have to have good reason. And if parents understand these things and they understand how the process works, parents are going to be much more successful in making sure their children are not taken. Now, with a safety plan is not a legally binding document, okay? Even though the parents may have participated in creating this safety plan, it is not a document that is binding. It is not a document that anybody can tell you you're going to be sued if you don't follow through with it. If Bob and I are exchanging money for the car and I give him the car, but he doesn't give me the money, then I can sue Bob for the money that he did not give me. And possibly Bob could also be arrested for that, because we had a legally binding contract. It had all the components of a contract. So I had the legal right to be able to ask for that contract to be enforced. Since safety plans do not have those things, they cannot be enforced. The only way that a safety plan can be enforced is if a judge orders for a safety plan to be put in place. That is the only time they can be enforced. It is extremely rare for a judge to order a safety plan be put in place. Normally, if a judge is brought into a situation, it is after CPS has already decided they want the children out of the home, and not as just a let's fix this or let's fix that situation. It's they want the child out of the home long term. So, we're going to talk about a couple of other little terms. When CPS decides that they want to take the child and they don't want to go through the safety plan, they're required to go to court and get a court order. The way they do this is by filing what's called a petition. A petition is the initial lawsuit. If I say that I'm going to sue Bob because of that car, the document that I fill out and I take to the court and I file it to sue him, that is a petition. Okay, that's in civil court. With criminal court, it's a different word, but in civil court, which is what CPS court is, it's called a petition. So what happens is CPS will go to the court. They will file this petition. This petition is supposed to include proof that there is reason to believe the child is in danger should they stay with their parents. So what CPS is supposed to do is they're supposed to go in, they're supposed to file, or they're supposed to draw up a petition, they're supposed to write out the petition. They're supposed to attach proof to this petition. This proof is called evidence. They are supposed to attach this evidence to the petition. And they are supposed to take it and file it with the court clerk. And they ask the court clerk to schedule a hearing. Now, this initial hearing does not always have the parent there. When the parent is not there, right, Amy, they don't. But as I said, what I'm trying to explain is what they are supposed to do. So, rarely is the parent present for the initial petition. When this happens, this is referred to as ex parte. This means that one of the parties is not there. They've X'd them out of this particular hearing. Okay? They have said, we're going to discuss things about this particular case without having everybody involved. And they will tell the judge, we have this proof that the child needs to be removed from the home. The caseworker came in, the caseworker was, CPS was called, a report was made that Blue Ivy was being burned with cigarettes and that there was no food in the home. The caseworker came in, there is no burn marks on Blue Ivy, and there's plenty of food in the home. However, the caseworker saw and took photographs of multiple weapons, guns, and knives within the reach of the child, and the child is playing in a pile of cocaine. So the CPS worker will take these photographs, and these photographs are going to be given to the CPS attorney. The CPS attorney will write the motion. It will be taken to the court, and a court date will be set. Usually these court dates are immediate. As soon as it's filed, CPS attorney and the CPS worker go straight to the judge's courtroom, and they have this ex parte meeting. The CPS worker says, Judge, I went into Beyonce's house. We had this call. This is what the call was about. And we found that the call was inaccurate, but I found these things, and I'm very concerned for the safety of the child. Here's a picture of the guns. Here's the picture of the knife. Here's the picture of the child playing in the cocaine. As you can see, the knives and the guns are on items that are various heights that the child can reach. So we're quite concerned that maybe Beyonce doesn't understand certain things that need to be done to protect a child's safety. We would like to be able to have the child taken from Beyonce temporarily so that we can help Beyonce become educated in how to properly care for her child. The judge is supposed to listen to these arguments and consider the evidence that is given to him. And he's supposed to say whether or not, based on the evidence, there is cause for the child to be removed from the home. Now, ex parte meetings are a pretty big no-no. They are the only time really that an ex parte meeting is considered to be okay is with a restraining order hearing or a harassment hearing. What they will do is they will allow the person that files saying, I need a restraining order against Bob. They'll go ahead and let them come in, say their piece, and they will issue a temporary order and then let Bob come in and defend himself. When it's a CPS order, the parent is allowed to defend themselves after the judge gives an order saying that CPS can pick the children up. That's when the parent gets a copy of the petition, copy of the lawsuit, saying that CPS thinks that they should be able to have the children. When a parent gets this document, it is extremely important that the parent does not ignore it. And I don't mean that the parent needs to just freak out and try to find an attorney, and I don't know how I'm going to get an attorney, and start calling Bob and Sam and John and Jane and June and whoever to see what advice they need. You have to respond to these motions. A response it's also referred to as an answer. It is you as the parent, you are going to address the accusations against you in this petition. If Beyonce is being her child to be around multiple weapons, which are within the reach of the child, and play in a pile of cocaine, then Beyonce needs to be able to write out her side of the story. No, Judge, that wasn't cocaine. That was fake snow. And all of those guns are prop guns and prop knives because we're doing a video. None of them are real. And, here's the proof of purchase that we got it from the gag shop to show that they're fake guns. So she's going to put all that in there. That is her answer. If you do not respond in writing to this petition, then the accusations against you are referred to as stipulated. Stipulated is a legal term meaning you admit without admitting that the accusations against you are true. You admit with your that they are true. So you never, ever, ever keep your mouth shut. Many attorneys will insist on only arguing the case verbally when they're standing before the judge. They don't want to go through and write out everything because it takes time away and takes away from the cases they're actually being paid for. They refuse to write motions many times. And that is oftentimes the reason that parents lose their cases when it goes to appeal. When a person goes to law school, one of the very first things that they teach them is if it's not in writing, it did not happen. You can say all day long that you told Judge Bob A, B, and C, but if it is not in writing, it did not happen. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to actually file something to tell Judge Bob something. It can be in writing as part of the transcript. But the only way that there's a transcript is if there's a court reporter. So make sure that anything that you want to tell Judge Bob, you put it in writing. So let's back up a little bit more. The judge has granted CPS's petition to remove your children. So CPS is going to come out to you and they're going to have the cops in tow and they're going to say, we've got a court order to take your kids. The very first thing you want to do is say, I want to see a copy of the court order. No order is legally enforceable unless it has been served on the parties of the case. If I am suing you, I have to serve you. If I have a judgment against you, you have to be served. That means that you are required to be given these documents so that you have a chance to defend yourself or so that you're able to be notified of what the judge has said his decision is. So you want to make sure you read it very well. CPS is not going to be very lenient in the amount of time that they let you do this. So what you need to do is say, I need to call my attorney immediately. You call an attorney. This is what I've been given. What does this mean? If you can't find an attorney because it's, 8:00 at night, call one of the advocates that, has knowledge of this and ask them what it means. Ask them what you're supposed to do. One of the biggest things is at this particular point, do not fight the CPS worker. Do not fight the officer. If you do, it's going to make it so much harder for you to get your children back because there is a court order and you will likely be arrested if you fight. You do not want your fight to be right there on the front lines. Your fight has to be in the courtroom. So what you're going to do is you're going to read the document and you're going to see where it says that the judge has awarded custody to Child Protective Services. At that point, ask CPS, can I please go get my child some clothing? Can I prepare them a bag? Get them a couple of things and tell your child, I love you. I will see you very, very soon. You want to remain as calm as possible because they will use every bit of that against you. They will say that you are mentally unstable. They will say that you're a hothead. They will say that you have no ability to control your emotions. They will use all of those things against you. Crying is okay. Screaming and hollering and throwing yourself on the ground and cussing them out and threatening to kill people, that's going to get you nowhere. Absolutely nowhere. So, your child's been taken by Child Protective Services. What next? If you have the finances to be able to get an attorney, you get an attorney. First thing you want to do before you get into that attorney's office is you want to take that petition that they brought to you, and you want to go in and you want to go line by line, and you want to write out whether or not what they put in there was true. And you want to write out what information that you have to prove it's not true. So that when you walk into your attorney's office, you can hand them the petition and you can hand them a rough draft response. And that attorney can hand that rough draft response to his paralegal and say, here, draft an answer. Draft is a legal term meaning write. What's going to happen, or what's supposed to happen, is the court is supposed to, immediately after giving CPS custody of your kids, they are immediately supposed to schedule a 72-hour hearing. In many cases, this does not happen. Or if it does happen, it can happen 72 days after, it can happen 5 days after. It can happen just whenever they decide they want to get a wild hair up their butt and do it. But it is a legal requirement to happen within 72 hours. In many states, if a 72-hour hearing is not conducted, they are legally required to return your children. Not in every case, not in every state, but in some states. So this is something that you can look up. You can find out when the hearing is, and the hearing is 72 hours from when the petition was granted to give CPS custody of your children. Now, you're going to have to wait for the 72 hours. This is going to be an excruciating time. You're not going to know what to do with yourself. You're going to be freaking out. You do not want to call CPS demanding to see your child. You want to be as friendly with them as possible. You want them to have absolutely nothing that they can say negative about you. Contact them and say, I would like to see my children. When can we have a visit with my children? CPS will likely tell you we will have to wait until after the 72-hour hearing. You want to make sure that you record this phone call. Now, some people will tell you that this is not legal. Some people will tell you that it is. It depends on the state and whether or not the state is a one-party or two-party consent state. What this means is you and Bob are having a conversation. You are one party to that conversation. Bob is the second party to that conversation. In a one-party consent state, Bob can record the phone call or the conversation without you knowing or saying it's okay for it to be recorded. If it's a two-party consent state, then that means that you have to say it's okay to record. Now, this can happen in several different ways. You call the phone company or you call the cable company and you hear that recording that says, this call will be recorded or monitored for quality assurance. By you staying on the phone, you have given them permission to record. So you didn't actually say yes. It's called implied consent. You give permission without verbally saying, yes, I give permission. Now, the consent rule does not apply in public spaces where a reasonable expectation of privacy is not something you can expect. So if you and Bob are sitting in McDonald's, then either one of you can record, even in a two-party consent state, without the other person knowing or being okay with it. Now, there has been quite a few cases that have actually given us permission to record any person who is a government agent or who is acting as an agent for the government. So that means you have the right to record the police officer who is arresting Bob across the street. You have the right to record Senator Joe Blow as you watch him walk into a hotel room with somebody who is not his wife. You also have the right to record any CPS workers. Even in a two-party consent state, you have the right to record without their okay. Because as a government agent or a representative of the government through a third-party company, they automatically lose the right to be able to consent. They don't have the right to consent because they are not a citizen. The law does not protect businesses. The law does not protect the government. Again, everything I'm saying is what it says on paper, what it's supposed to do. When humans get involved, it all goes to hell. So everything I'm telling you is what is on paper. So the law does not protect businesses. The law does not protect the government. Child Protective Services is a business. They are acting as government agents through third-party contract with the state. So because of that, they do not have any constitutional protections. They don't have the right to free speech. They don't have the right to not have to incriminate themselves by making statements that can be used against them in court to prove that they are guilty of something. However, we do. We are citizens. We are protected by those things. So when you speak to CPS, if you know that they're coming, you make sure that you've got video cameras. At the very least, you want to have your cell phone turned on so you can record the conversation. If you call them, you want to record the conversation. It is actually my recommendation that any communication with CPS is done through email. That way you can have a written record of the conversation, because transcribing these conversations with CPS can be very, very expensive. Email, it costs a penny to print off an email. Record anytime you go to the CPS office, anytime that you, whenever you go to a visit with your child, record the visit. You want to make sure that every single thing is documented. When you get home from going to the CPS office, sit down immediately and write down your version of what happened. Even though you have it on recording, you still want to write this down. When you have a visit, come home and write down everything that happened at that visit. You want to keep all this together. You're going to want to use this later on in court for something called a parental court report. So I'm going to stop right there at the 72-hour hearing and visitation and parental court report. Okay? So we're going to stop right there on these. And if y'all would like, we can pick back up on another show next week. And continue to go through the process and continue to help y'all understand the legalities of this and the terminology that goes along with this, so that y'all can understand what's happening with your case, how you need to address certain situations. You're not going to learn majority of this from your attorney. If you are given an attorney, which not every state will actually give a parent a court appointed attorney, even if their finances make it to where they can't afford an attorney, not every state is going to do that, because the Constitution does not protect a parent it does not protect a person in a civil case in such ways that they are afforded an attorney. The Constitution was not written to deal with civil matters. Constitution was written only to deal with criminal matters. So when it comes to things like CPS cases, we have a lot of laws that we are still in the process of making, so that we can basically establish a civil constitution, a civil rights constitution. This is something that I don't see happening until probably my grandchildren are old enough to vote, my great grandchildren. But it's something that we're working on. And it's very important that if you have to be involved with these people, that you understand how to make sure that your rights are not violated. And if they are violated, how to protect yourself and your children from those violations becoming permanent, becoming so destructive that you lose your children forever, that you lose your mind, and in some cases, your life. The last thing I'm going to say before we leave is, if CPS knocks on your door, whether they take your children or not, it is a very, very traumatic thing. It can sometimes cause PTSD. I've had many parents tell me that after CPS knocked on their door, anytime they would hear somebody knock at their door or ring the doorbell, their anxiety would peak, their blood pressure would rise, their heart would start pounding. They're scared to death. Who's at my door? Who's at my door? Who's at my door? This is a PTSD reaction. It is extremely important that you do not let this reaction become one that overtakes your life. I know of parents that now suffer from agoraphobia, which is the fear of going outside. They will refuse to leave their house for any reason because they're terrified of what happens when CPS knocked at their door. So if CPS knocks at your door, call somebody, call a friend, somebody that you can trust, talk to them, tell them what happened. Do not let this anxiety build up. Do not let this end up putting you in a position that you're going to be psychologically damaged to the point that CPS is able to use that against you to prove that you're an unfit parent or to accuse you of being an unfit parent. If you feel like at any point you can't go on, you want to take your life, call me, call Darren, call Vinny, call Spanny. There are so many people that are out there that are willing to talk to you. These are people who have been there themselves. These are people who have fought the system for years. We understand what you're going through. We don't judge. We've been there. We know what you're feeling. We do not want you to take your life. You've got to be there one day to be able to tell your kids what's going on, what really truly happened. If you need to reach me, Kim Page on Facebook, look me up, message me. Be more than happy to help you in any way I can. Thank you guys for hanging out with me tonight. And leave me a comment. Let me know. Do you want me to do a few more of these shows and keep going with the education on how the system is supposed to work and explaining the legal terminology and the CPS terminology? Or would you rather only have parents on telling their stories? Let me know. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and call it a night. I hope y'all have a fantastic evening. Thanks for watching Turn the Page with Kim Page.
In a small town under a faded sky lives a woman with a heart so wide. She fights for the lost, the set aside, against a system where shadows hide. She's seen the pain in a child's eyes. Tears fall down, unanswered cries. With every case she stands so strong, turning pages, righting all the wrongs. Turn the page, let the truth be told. Shine a light on secrets dark and bold. For the families torn, the children mourn. Turn the page, let their voices mourn. Calls in the dead of night, holds the hands of those who fight.